Stay tuned for all the craziest traits that psychopaths have. Coming in at number 10, we have they lie all the time. Something that a psychopath will do is constantly lie. It's a weird power game for them, and it's not even big lies. They will just do this about little things, and they have a multitude of reasons why they will do something like this. One, they love to see if they can trick you. If they can start getting away with small lies, then what kind of big lies could they trick you with? They start with slowly pulling you into a situation where you don't know what you believe because they have spun a web of lies around you to make it hard to discern what is real and what is not. Another reason why is because it gives them a sense of control over you. Being able to lie to you and fool you makes them feel superior. If you know someone that lies to you constantly, even in a joking way, they might have some psychopathic tendencies. Telling you that lying to you was a joke is a great way to cover up what they're actually trying to do, which is manipulate. Coming in number 9, they have different personalities for different people. I mean, we all probably do this a little bit. You have a face that you show your friends, someone who is fun and probably one of the more laid-back versions of yourself. And you might have a version of yourself that you show to your family. Depending on how close you are with them, this might be a very honest version of yourself or a more reserved version of yourself so you don't offend anyone at Christmas dinner. But what I'm talking about is this friend might have a different face they show to almost every person they meet. They work who they are to make sure that each person likes them, and they aren't doing this to please the people around them. It's one thing if someone is so insecure they feel the need to change who they are to please the people around them, but it's another thing when they are doing this so they can take advantage of the people around them. There is going to be a common theme with this list, and that is that manipulation is the name of the game when it comes to psychopaths. They want something from you, whether it's money, your time, your affection, or anything else they can see as value, and they are going to do whatever they can to try and take it from you. Coming in at number 8, we have narcissistic. A way that psychopaths can justify their insane behavior is by thinking that they are just better than everyone. Now, the people around them don't deserve honesty, and that they were meant to be manipulated because the psychopath is better than everyone. I mean, they aren't, but that's something that they can say in their head. If you have a friend who says things like, I'm just better than other people, or I'm very smart, or I never make mistakes, well, they might just be up their own butt. I don't think every person who says that is a psychopath, but there's a chance that they might have some psychopathic tendencies. Coming in at number 7, we have violent. This is probably the most obvious one. This friend of yours, do they watch people get hurt like a little bit too much? Do they try to start fights? Do they constantly want to be in a physical altercation? Do they harm animals or other things that are weaker than them? And I'm not talking about forgetting to water your houseplants. If you know someone like this, you might want to start distancing yourself from them because they sound very unstable, and you don't want to be the person who ends up on the receiving end of their violence. Coming in at number 6, they have no empathy for other people. It's no surprise that most CEOs in America have psychopathic tendencies. You have to be pretty cold-hearted to want to make so much money and just hoard it like a dragon sitting on its wealth. And on top of that, you are making billions at the expense of other people. Well, that's because psychopaths tend to have very little empathy for the people around them. They literally can't feel compassion for people who are suffering. That is pretty messed up. And I'm not talking about someone falling off a skateboard. Those videos are always funny. Seeing someone get hurt in that fashion is just brilliant. If you laugh at that, it's not because you have no empathy, it's because you are literally a great person. But what I mean by this is they don't know how to feel bad for people because they literally can't do it. They have no ability to feel that emotion. Coming in at number 5, we have no respect for rules.
Do you like
I understand if you don't want to follow all the rules. I mean, we all have jaywalked one time or another. If you're someone who refuses to jaywalk on an open street, then I would think that is something that is wrong with you. But what I'm talking about is someone who will go out of their way to break rules, like someone who thinks they are above the law for whatever reason. Like they might do things like constantly steal from stores, even though they aren't in any sort of financial bind. They might do strange things like refuse to tip at a restaurant because they don't want to follow the rules. If you're someone like this, psychopath or not, you are a trash person, and the people at the restaurant should spit in your food. If you don't want to be able to go out, they should charge you a base tip before you go in, and then you can throw on an extra tip after your meal. Well, maybe it doesn't need to be that intense, but if you don't tip, you are literal scum. Coming in at number 4, we have they can't sit with their own thoughts. A huge problem and a telltale sign for someone who is a psychopath is a person who can never live without stimulation. Now, this can display itself in a lot of different ways. Maybe this person loves to constantly be full of adrenaline. They are someone who likes to do extreme sports, but even when they aren't consumed in that world, they might be needing to watch exciting footage or gamble on things that are very high stakes. They have a constant need for a jolt of energy from things that are exciting. They might be someone who is constantly using drugs. This could be in any form. Maybe they have several drinks throughout the day to spice things up, or they mix drinking with other drugs because they need a different kind of high. life. They always want to be stimulated by energy coursing through their veins. I mean, most of the people on this planet can't live without coffee, so are all those people psychopaths? Or are they just trying to get through the day? Another way that they might keep themselves stimulated is through mind games. If you find that your friend is always arguing with you, it could be because they need some form of stimulation at all times. Coming in at number 3, we have they never accept blame for anything. I mean, this isn't easy for anyone to do. There isn't a bunch of people in this world who are eager to admit when they are wrong, even when it's clear that they did something wrong. That's just the way the world is, but for a psychopath, this will go a few levels deeper. For them, it doesn't matter what the problem is. It could be something like they're late for work. They will always find a way to make it someone else's problem. They will get mad if you try to explain how they could do things better, so they wouldn't have this problem anymore because there is no way they could take advice from someone else. They are clearly the smartest person around. Another piece of this, would it be very hard for them to show actual regret or remorse when they eventually admit that they did something wrong? Are they telling you that they were wrong because they really felt like they made a mistake? Or was this all a ploy to get you to stop bringing up their mistakes? Just something to please you so they can go on being their regular old psychopathic self. Another mind game that they could be playing with you. Coming in number 2, we have strangely charming. So the cornerstone of someone who is a psycho is a person who can't feel emotions like everyone else. So when you can't express emotion like most other people, that might push people away from you. So what psychopaths will get good at is being so charismatic, like to the point where it's almost weird. Now, if someone is just super likable, that's one thing. There's nothing wrong with a person being an awesome person that people just want to be around. The key way that you can tell the difference with this one is if the person seems to have a different type of charisma they present to different people. Like they know what kind of face to show to everyone to make them like them, and they're not just being themselves and letting people enjoy who they are. Also, if you find that these charismatic encounters lead to them trying to get something out of you or another person, then that could be a sign that they are a little cuckoo in the head. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have short-sighted. Now, some of us are just bad at planning for the future. We can't really get our head on straight and figure out what we want to do, or you just don't see what you want to work towards. That's a pretty normal thing. But the difference with the psychopath is they will not be able to plan for the future because they're constantly trying to get something that will get them ahead quickly. If you know someone who is always on a get-rich-quick scheme or trying to swindle people constantly, well, then you might want to watch out because they could be on the crazy side. All right, guys, that has been our list. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I've been your host, Jay Reyna, and we'll see you on the next one. They are someone who likes to do.
So, starting off this countdown, we have Tommy Taffy. So, in the episode titled Freaky Fred, Muriel's cousin Fred pays them a visit. However, this episode starts to take a dark turn when we learn that Fred has an obsession with shaving people's hair. Now, Fred bears some interesting resemblances to the creepypasta creature Tommy Taffy. So, Tommy Taffy is said to come into families' homes and terrorize them. You have to do as Tommy says or else you will face the consequences. Let's address the similarities. Both Tommy and Fred have golden hair, light eyes, and both have a huge smile. Both Tommy and Fred show up unexpectedly at people's houses and end up torturing the individuals for pleasure. So, people believe that Fred was based on the character Tommy Taffy, or that he in fact is a version of Tommy, or maybe even Tommy's brother. Either way, both those characters look terrifying with their wide smiles. Coming in at number 9, we have Hell. So, this show is said to take place in the middle of nowhere. To warn Muriel. Therefore, he technically does have multiple heads. In our 8th spot, we have the real-life villains. So, there's no denying that this show has some pretty terrifying villains. What's even more terrifying is that people theorize that some of these villains symbolize real-life people. For example, the character Fred is a sexual predator, and the character Katz is a serial killer. Then you have the character The Perfectionist that teaches Courage how to be perfect, and gets mad whenever he does something that's not perfect according to her standards. So she is said to suffer from OCD, where everything needs to be perfect. Then you have Eustace and Muriel, who are a couple in an abusive relationship. And lastly, you have the cruel veterinarian character. In the show,
You
this
have my
character
card.
sent
Like, I
Courage's
hate when you
parents
try to
space,
do that.
And he tries to do the same to Courage.
Yes,
He
it
is
does.
the
It show you my full
Sergei
card.
Korolev, a Russian rocket engineer who experimented by sending dogs into space. But then you have some funnier ones, like how King Ramses is a neighbor that Eustace borrowed something from, and then he didn't give it back. So in the episode, he keeps saying, "Return the slab," aka "Return my hedge trimmer," or
That's the
whatever
last 4
he
numbers.
borrowed.
What do you
Moving
mean?
on to number 7, we have the lost son theory. So this theory basically states that Eustace and Muriel once were parents to a little boy named Jensen. Now, Eustace was so happy to have a son since he wanted a little mini version of himself. However, when Jensen was 6 months old, a wild animal stole him from his crib. Turns out he was stolen by the Cajun fox, who needed a baby to add to his Cajun baby stew. Cajun fox in this series is known to cook and eat humans. In the episode Cajun Grand... stew, he tries to kidnap Muriel to use her as an ingredient in his stew. So it might just be that he kidnapped and cooked their baby Jensen. Then, when Muriel saw Courage all alone in the alleyway, she felt that he could fill their empty void and act as a replacement for their lost child. But Eustace wasn't happy with this idea, which is why he's always grouchy and refers to him as the stupid dog. In our 6th spot, we have the abusive owner. Okay, so Eustace isn't the nicest towards Courage. He is verbally abusive to him, constantly yelling at him and calling him a stupid dog. Well, this theory believes that Courage is actually a little boy and Eustace is his abusive father. Eustace constantly calls him a stupid dog to make him feel worthless, so he suffers from low self-esteem and just imagines himself as a dog. This also explains why he is constantly afraid. It's years of abuse that has caused him to develop severe anxiety. The only one that truly loves him is his mom. He thinks others will harm him like his father does. That's why when Courage sees other individuals, he suffers from anxiety attacks, thinking they too will abuse him. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the puppets. So during the finale of season 1, Eustace and Muriel were turned into puppets while Courage was controlling them. Well, people believe that for the following episodes, they remained in their puppet form and never turned back into humans. They theorized that Courage continued to act out his life with them. Everything that happened since that episode was all inside his head. He couldn't deal with the loss of his owners, so he pretends that they are still alive by puppeteering them. In our 4th spot, we have the lost episode. Now, there are so many shows that people claim to have a lost episode, and Courage the Cowardly Dog is no stranger to this phenomena. So, people have created a theory saying that there are multiple lost episodes out there that are much darker and gorier. Let me describe one of the episodes. So, they claim that this episode starts with static before it eventually shows Courage wearing a mask while rocking in a chair. He then drags Eustace and Muriel to the basement and chains them to the wall. He begins to torture them while they beg and cry for him to stop. Then he ties ropes around their necks and strangles them to death. The episode ends with him back in the rocking chair, just staring at the camera with a large grin on his face for 2 minutes straight. Creepy. Moving on to number 3, we have the theory that Courage is a real dog. So, dogs are said to be a man's best friend. They are typically very loyal and will protect their owners at any cost. Like, you hear stories of dogs getting lost and then traveling miles to find their way back home to their owner. So, what if that's kind of the case for Courage? He's just a regular dog that is trying to protect his owners from any threat. However, the threats he sees aren't real. Let me explain. So, Courage was abandoned as a puppy. That right there can leave any dog traumatized and scared of the world.
Guys, get out of here.
As a result, he sees all other humans besides
What the fuck's
his owners
happening?
as
Fucking
monsters. This explains why Muriel and Eustace aren't bothered by the monsters. In addition, in the opening
was in our
sequence
garbage
for
can
every
trying to fuck
episode,
with our
Courage
electricity.
sees his shadow.
1 second.
Yo, I said you was in our
What's
garbage
good,
can
baby?
trying to fuck with our electricity.
Yeah.
Ain't no store dropping this shit.
So this means that whenever someone is angry, he views them as a monster. Another instance is in the episode The Quilt Club. In this episode, Courage is afraid of the Stitch sisters, 2 conjoined sisters. But Muriel isn't. Well, that's because in reality, they are just twin sisters. And again, Courage regards them as monsters. Another instance is in the episode The Quilt Club. In this episode, Courage is afraid of the Stitch sisters, two conjoined sisters. But Muriel isn't. Well, that's because in reality, they are just twin sisters. And again, Courage regards them as monsters. So the whole show is from the dog's point of view, who is just so traumatized from his past that he imagines everything is scary and out to get him. In our second spot, we have the true story. All right, if you weren't already creeped out, you will be now.